So I have 5 o'clock, so I think we'll get started. I'm assuming all the folks from Elkins High School are student officers or members of NEHS. So it's great to have kids here. Thank you so much. Let me reintroduce myself. I'm Dave Wendelin. I'm the Director of National English Honor Society. This is our third webinar in a series that we're trying to do once a month this year. As we all know, this is a rather unusual year. Lots of different ways of communicating. And so we've attempted to try to bring some actual faces to the work that you're all doing for NEHS and support chapters as best we can as they either work virtually or actually face-to-face. So tonight's topic will be around writing. So again, if you would please introduce yourselves in the chat box. You'll also use the chat box if you have questions as we go along. We'll try to address those later as we finish up. Our plan is to be here for about a half an hour. We know you're all very busy. You'll also note that we will be sending all of the participants a copy of this PowerPoint presentation so that you'll have access to all of the links that we will be addressing. And then you'll also receive a survey that will ask you to give us some feedback about how this afternoon went, and if you have suggestions for others in the future, we'd love to hear about that. So with that, let me begin. Today we're talking about Why I Write, which is the theme for the National Council of Teachers of English National Day on Writing. It's been consistent with that. You'll see a link in a little while. So we want to talk about how we're encouraging writing engagement through NEHS. We want to give you some specific details about the National Day on Writing. Breanne is going to share some things with you about her school. We want to talk about some things that Chris has been engaged in with his group in Oaxaca, Mexico, and then remind you or introduce you to some of the writing opportunities that NEHS has going this year, and give you some updates about how that's going. Our participants this evening are just wonderful folks. I know you're going to love to get to know them. Breanne Hicks is from St. Mary's Hall in San Antonio, Texas. She is one of the Advisory Council representatives for the Southwest region. She's also the chapter advisor for her school. Great source of information. So you will find her contact information on our webpage if you have a need to contact a regional representative, or you can contact me at any time. Christopher Lockwood is a very, very busy man. He teaches English at the Instituto Blaise Pascale in Oaxaca, Mexico, and then every 3 weeks or so he travels for 350 miles into the jungle, and he's a principal at another school. He has done some amazing work with his students this past summer, dealing with the pandemic and writing, and has plans for other things to happen. So he has graciously agreed to be with us tonight and share some of his good ideas. And again, I'm going to be your moderator tonight, and certainly you may contact me at any time and with any questions or suggestions. We'd love to hear feedback from you. The format for tonight is to talk specifically, as I said, about the National Day on Writing. Then Pandemic Spring is the title of a journal that Chris and his students have put together. Here's a hard copy that I was allowed to have. That is a collection of information and ideas and thoughts and emotional pieces dealing with how we're all dealing with the pandemic and what's happening with that. And Chris will talk more about that. We want to share with you some of the flash fiction that has occurred in one of our writing contests. We have 6-word stories in and judged, and some of them are quite amazing. So we're going to spend just a little time running through those winning examples that we had for September. And then we'll also, as I said, talk about the NEHS opportunities. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Breanne, and she will share some information about her work.
Thank you, Dave, and I'm so excited to talk to you more about the National Day on Writing, especially since I see so many students in the chat and we can think about ways to get you involved. So just to give you a little background information, since 2009, the National Day on Writing, which is actually sponsored by the National Council of Teachers of English, celebrates the many places, reasons, and ways that we write and communicate. So it's housed under the hashtag #WhyIWrite, and thousands of students, teachers, professionals, and even celebrities come together to share why they feel compelled to share their ideas and their opinions, specifically through the written word. So we would really like for you to consider how you and your chapter can be involved in this celebration. So it is celebrated every year, October 20th. However, you can choose just to celebrate on that day, or you can make it a week-long celebration if you'd like. So here we have some resources for you to consider. So in National Council of Teachers of English is also sponsoring some things. They have a conversation with Jacqueline Woods that's going to be available to you, and we have the link there for you. We also have the official website of Why I Write, and then in addition, you can see an article that I've written about what we do at my school in the past to celebrate National Day on Writing. So as you brainstorm ideas for how you can get involved, you should maybe start by asking yourself some of these questions. Are you going to celebrate in person, or are you going to do so virtually? So I know a lot of us still have restrictions on the amount of people that can be in one place at a time. So you might want to think about what you can do in a virtual space. This year, my chapter is partnering with our librarian to create a LibGuide that's going to have writing resources, writing contests, personal essays, and memoirs, with a place for students to share their stories describing what makes them unique. So that could be definitely something that you partner with other professionals at your school. Also, you might think about whether you can celebrate with just your chapter on a small scale, or if you want to involve your entire school. I work at a K through 12 school, and so we traditionally would set up a space in the gym where everybody would come during their particular English class period, and then we would have activities designed for different age groups. But you could also celebrate as a chapter. Something that I think students have responded to most in the past celebrations was inviting community members to come in and share their writing talents. So think about the resources you have in your community at large. Do you have any writers? Do you have anyone who's blogging? We've had people bring in antique typewriters just so that students can feel what Charles Dickens or what some of their favorite writers, we have the quill pens for people like Charles Dickens, and we have the typewriters for our more modern writers, so that they could feel what it meant to write through different times. We've had people come in and teach us how to put wax seals on envelopes and things of that nature. So also, you might want to think about how your group can use this day for you to become activists in your community. Maybe you could write letters to soldiers stationed overseas, or write letters to your local politicians, or even letters to school administrators. And then, of course, to give yourself some press for the hard work that you've been doing, think about how you can broadcast to a larger group of people. So would the local news like to come and showcase the event? That's happened for us in the past. Or simply maybe have some of your members write blogs or write articles for the local newspapers, so that you can show everyone how you're celebrating the National Day on Writing. So again, as I mentioned, my chapter is adding an additional theme. So although the broad category each year is Why I Write, we really like to have a specific theme each year, and we like for the chapter members to choose that theme. And so we're going to do a couple of different things with What's My Story. We're having students do 6-word memoirs. We're also asking them to think about what makes them unique. But something also that's worked well for us in the past are these 3 bullets. Although this is a national celebration, there's no need to feel overwhelmed by the possibilities of everything that you can do. If you haven't participated in this event before, I really encourage you to kind of start small. Maybe you could ask members to write letters to themselves to be returned in May. You could even do this as a school-wide initiative, and also involve your teachers. Have them set some goals in their letters as well. Or you could have students express gratitude to someone in a thank you letter or an email. Or you could encourage students to write a brief narrative of why they write, and you could share that with others, maybe virtually through a LibGuide or a chat wall, or if you're back physically in your classroom, maybe you could create a bulletin board or another space. So those are just some ideas that I have, and I really encourage you to join in this celebration because it's so powerful to gather all of our students together and have them reflect on the importance of the written word, especially our members, because they love English as much as we do. So we want to make sure that they have an opportunity to showcase what they are passionate about.
Thank you, Breanne. We're going to turn now to Chris, and he's going to be able to describe Pandemic Spring and the fine work he's been doing with his students.
Thank you, Dave. Well, just to give you a bit of context about who we are and where we're from, so I and my group, my NEHS chapter, are from Instituto Blaise Pascale in Oaxaca in the south of Mexico. We're a private middle and high school. So we have about 650 students. About 50 of them form the National English Honor Society chapter. We are, as far as I know, the only chapter in Mexico, which makes us always very, very happy. We're also in our second year of being an NEHS chapter. And we're not an international school, we're not a bilingual school either. But we do have a really good level of English in our students. We have some really dedicated English teachers which support the work that the NEHS chapter does through the school. So to explain really the anthology that the students created here in Oaxaca, it all came about on March 13th when we abandoned school, essentially. So all our face-to-face contact between teachers and students has since then been lost. We haven't been back to school. So nobody's seen each other in person since March 13th. And in one of our meetings of our chapter board, one of the topics for discussion was what we could do to bring everyone together, because all our planned events for the summer, for this semester, for next semester, have been put on hold. And one of the suggestions from the students that came up was to have a writing activity, which could include all the students in Oaxaca and which maybe could produce or form a sort of archive document, a historical document about life during the lockdown in Oaxaca. And the project continued, and we developed this. And then there was a moment in which I gave a class to some students at the German school, the German International School in Mexico City. And I mentioned that we were doing this project in Oaxaca, and one of the students there asked if they'd be able to participate, which sort of took me back a little bit because I wasn't expecting so much interest. And then the project gathered speed. We developed a very straightforward, I think, a very straightforward call for submissions that we sent to Dave and the NHS, who are very kind in spreading around the world, and we also did a little bit of publicity as well. And then this, what was a very, very small project, developed into a much bigger international project. One of the things we were very clear on in our call for submissions that we would accept any type of student writing. It could be prose, it could be drama, it could be poetry, and we also opened the door up to artists or young artists to submit their work that they created during the lockdown as well. So we could really get as wide a panorama as possible of what young people were doing and what young people were thinking during during the lockdown. And eventually we had submissions from 18 different countries, from places that we never really dreamed we would get submissions from. So there's some from Singapore, some from Korea, India is on there, I think. There were, every continent was represented, which was for us a real achievement. And also artwork came from places around the world as well as from Oaxaca. We have a very talented student in the school who's an artist who shared her entire collection of artworks that she created during the pandemic to include in the anthology too. And really for us, we didn't realize the scale of our project until it came time to review all the submissions that had been sent, which was a huge job. So what's in the anthology right here is approximately 40% of the total submissions. So because there were lots, we were able to be quite selective, really. And that process of reviewing and editing and making corrections took a long time. And I think that was one of the biggest surprises for the students, for the editing board for this anthology, that how difficult it is to critique other people's work. Especially people you've never met, who've done you the favor of sending their work for consideration, and how we could try and produce or select a wide enough range of work to cover a variety of genres, to represent a variety of first languages, a variety of nationalities, and a variety of resident countries. But it was a very, very good opportunity for the students to go beyond what I see in my case as superficial self-evaluations that students do when they hand in work for class. Right? It's very difficult to get students to do self-evaluations. And in this case, they were put in the position of essentially their teacher, who goes through and corrects their work, word by word. And they had to do this. They had to work really, really hard on the evaluation and correction, with the aim of making the authors of these pieces happy with the final publication as well. Another huge challenge for us was the typesetting, which was sort of fell to me a little bit. And we tried to do that as a team, and it was I took lead on that a little bit, I think. And we did, I think, a good job. But luckily, the printing company in Oaxaca, who made our limited supply of physical copies, were able to do it all better. So they did that for free because they saw this project and they really wanted to support this project as well. So basically, everybody who's been involved in this project has dedicated lots of their time, their abilities, their talents to making it a success. And what started as a very, very small chapter project very, very quickly went beyond that and became a local and then an international project that went far beyond anything we'd ever thought of. And well, we decided to take everything a step further. We registered the book. It has a UK ISBN number. So we've had to send a copy of our anthology. It's been sent to the British Library. And we were told that the Bodleian Library at Oxford and the University Library at Cambridge, because they're legal deposit libraries, will be requiring a copy at some point as well, which is also really good for us. It's really great to think that so many students' work from around the world and all the efforts of the students here in Oaxaca are going to have a permanent home in these very, very important libraries. And a copy has made its way to Dave and the National English Honor Society. I mean, obviously, we're incredibly grateful for all their support and motivation and enthusiasm for this project. It was a labor of love for us here in Oaxaca, but it was also really important for us to have the support of the National English Honor Society. Because it wasn't an easy project. It grew and grew organically, but it was really, really useful to have Dave behind us, essentially keeping us all going. And the students here have been bitten by the bug, as it were, and are planning a second anthology, which is going to include work by young writers from Mexico, particularly from Mexico, and particularly those writing in the We're one of the 16 indigenous languages that are spoken in the state of Oaxaca. There are about 68 languages, indigenous languages spoken across Mexico, other than Spanish. So this is a this is a much more logistically complicated process, because we need to find translators who can help with the process of translating the original works from the original language, and we then publish a trilingual, hopefully, anthology in the original indigenous language, in Spanish, and then in English as well. So this is a big job, a really, really big job, but we're looking forward to it. We're looking forward to be able to represent underrepresented writers from Mexico in the same way that we represented underrepresented young writers with Pandemic Spring. And essentially, this first anthology, Pandemic Spring, has been a big springboard for us as a chapter and as a executive board of a chapter, in knowing that it is possible to create a really, really big project, a really, really good project with a limited number of people, with a limited number of resources. And it is something that I think looks complicated, sounds complicated, but essentially it's just about time and dedication. If you have the time and dedication, you can make this work and you can create a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful project. Thank you very much.
I just want to reiterate, the link that is on this slide is the link to the anthology. It is free for you to access. You can show it to your students. You can encourage them. And honestly, you don't have to take on such a huge task. I think Chris is doing amazing work, as is Breanne. But think about your own communities and think about the underrepresented groups there, and what you might think about doing as a project. And again, this could be something that's done virtually. It doesn't have to be face-to-face necessarily, although some of the hard work probably is better if you've got a group of folks together. So thank you so much, Chris, for sharing all of that information. So we just want to bring some other things to your attention as we move forward with this afternoon. Last year, we started a writing challenge, and many of you participated. We had amazing poetry being sent in every month last year around particular themes that we identified. And then the advisory council members spent time each month selecting the best of that month's entry, and then we re-examined all of the best at the end of the year and sent some small monetary rewards to those folks who were participating and had some of the very finest writing. This year we switched over to flash fiction. So instead of having themes, we have forms this year. And in just a few minutes, I'm going to share the 6-word stories that were the winners from September. I also want to talk about the ones that have already come in for October. Dribbles, this actually should say 50 words. We'll have a 100-word story opportunity coming in later in the year, but dribbles have come in and they're in the process of being evaluated. Next month, the challenge is postcard fiction. We're asking people who are interested in submitting to get an actual postcard with a picture on one side, blank on the other, write a story on the blank side related to the picture on the front. This one is going to be a little more of a challenge because it's going to be handwritten. So we're asking then everybody to upload the front and the back of those postcards, and we'll go through a process of evaluation. We are amazed at the participation. For October, we have 47 entries from 17 different schools. So we're thrilled that people are finding this as a way to engage their members, to find ways to connect with other individuals. And again, if they're in a virtual setting, they can still participate as well as if they're face-to-face. So here are some of the examples of the winning 6-word stories that we have published. And so these folks have seen their work in print through our social media connections. I want you to pay attention to not only the sentence that they wrote, but to the titles that's here. But I'm going to read them to you quickly so that you have a sense of the quality. So this one was entitled Math. Society's math lesson for today, division. Pretty insightful. Senior year, the first of many lasts begins. Rather poignant. Persistence. She sought success, but discovered persistence. What a wonderful lesson in capturing something in 6 words. It's really powerful. This one's a little more timely for the social unrest that's going on. You're resisting as the boy wept. Obviously 2 different voices there. Or pills, new medication, finished in 1 night. So there's obviously a story behind this one that we don't know, and we're perhaps wondering about what that's all about. But Austin really caught our attention. And from some advisors, and so certainly those of you who are advisors can participate, another COVID school year lesson learned. And finally, every throat tickle screams my doom, again from another advisor. I think we're all kind of sensitive to that when every time we clear our throat or have a cough, we think, oh dear, might this be it? So very powerful writing, very simple. But again, even though the competition for 6-word stories is currently done, why not try something like that perhaps in your National Day in Writing effort? And I will tell you that 6-word stories are going to roll back around toward the end of the year as well. Other things that we've been doing for writing opportunities for NEHS, we've just completed the Intellectual Freedom Challenge, which is asking students to defend texts that might be challenged in their particular communities. They can take a stand agreeing with the challenge or defending the opportunity for students to read. That was completed on October 5th. We're currently evaluating those, and we'll announce winners soon. As I've said, the monthly writing challenges, those are due at the beginning of every month. They're all listed under writing challenges on our website, so you can plan ahead, see what the form is coming up, and encourage your kids to start preparing. And then soon we will start talking about the Common Reader Scholarship applications, which requires an essay. And in fact, I will put a plug in for the November webinar that will be around the Common Reader, which this year is the Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. And we'll also have a conversation involving students around censorship and challenged books and student right to read. We have some just a few more links, and then we will see if we have any questions that we can address. The NEHS Scholarships and Awards can be found at, you can submit at NEHS Apply. We have a big effort around social media and blog submissions, so you can submit to our social media coordinator at submit@nehsnewsletter.us. We'd love to hear your examples. And we also have, we know, and many of you do know, Chris Crutcher's work. He is volunteering his time at no charge to come into your NEHS chapter meeting or into your classroom and be a virtual speaker, absolutely free, so that you might take advantage of that. I suspect he's being inundated with requests, but if you want to go to this website and find out if he's available on your timeline, that would be great. So with that, we just have a few minutes left. If you have questions, certainly please put them into the chat. We'll try to talk about them. Breanne or Chris, do you have any further final comments that you'd like to make?
Just to remind everyone to feel free to email me if you have any questions about how to organize an event, and I'll be happy to email you resources that I've used in the past, and I can also help you brainstorm some ideas for your chapter. So please feel free to reach out.
Again, Breanne's contact information is on our website, as well as all of the other advisory council members. So if you go under the About section, you can find their addresses. We are all here to help, particularly if you're a new chapter advisor. That's a daunting task. So please reach out to us, and we'd be glad to give you some support. Oh, and Breanne has put her email into the chat as well. So thank you, Breanne. All right. Anything else that we can share with you this evening? Well, thank you so much for participating. We're hitting our 30-minute mark right on time, so that's exciting. I guess we planned this well. We appreciate it. I want to acknowledge behind the scenes folks who aren't visible but have been participating in the background, setting this up, helping us, supporting us all the way. So we appreciate the work of the team from the national office in Northern Illinois University. With that, I think we'll say have a wonderful evening. Take care. Be safe. Do lots of writing, and let us know what you're doing. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.